Good morning, students. Welcome to Module 8. Now, before we start with the topic National Income and its Measurement, we're now coming to an end of the topic National Income and its Related Aggregates, and the last unit is GDP and Welfare. Yes, students. Now, a very important question. Can the GDP of a country be taken as an index of welfare of the people of a country? Yes. Now, this question arises in the minds of everyone, of all the citizens, whether young or old. Now, should we all aim for a higher GDP so as to increase the welfare of a people? Yes. So now if a person has more income, he can buy more goods and services and his material well-being improves. So it seems reasonable to treat his or her income level as his or her level of well-being. And that is why we all strive hard to increase our level of income. But a very important question, or we can say a query which arises in the minds of everyone as students of economics, whether to treat nominal GDP as a good indicator or real GDP is a better indicator of welfare. So the planners and the statisticians of a country, they consider real GDP as a good indicator of welfare of the people. Welfare of the people is always measured in terms of availability of goods and services per person. Increase in real GDP means increase in the level of output in the economy. Now, other things remaining constant. Now, when we are talking about other things, we're talking about price level remains constant, and this I have already discussed with you in module 7, wherein I drew a distinction between nominal GDP and real GDP. So when other things remain constant, that is the price level remains constant, this means greater availability of goods and services per person, implying higher level of welfare. And this is the reason we consider real GDP as a better indicator and we do not consider normal GDP as an index of welfare, because nominal GDP could have risen due to a rise in the general price level or inflation. Yes, as already discussed, there is a direct relationship between income and welfare. As income increases, the welfare of the people or social welfare also increases. But we can say that there are certain limitations related to GDP as an index of welfare. And the first limitation is distribution of income. And the question is, how uniform is it? Whether it is equal or whether it is unequal. Now, if distribution of income is equal, there the retained earnings or the undistributed profits would also go into the hands of the poor people, and hence they will be able to satisfy their basic necessities of life, and therefore this increases the welfare of the people. But if distribution of income turns unequal, GDP growth fails to reflect a rise in social welfare, and India is facing this situation at present. Now, for example, if per capita GDP is rising, starvation deaths are hitting the headlines more often than ever before, and as a result, distribution of income is becoming increasingly unequal, which breeds resentment in the minds of the poor people. Now, the second limitation is composition of GDP. Now, composition of GDP may not be welfare oriented. Now, for example, now if the total GDP is more concentrated towards defense goods, now defense goods which are required for the safety and security of the country, they are increasing welfare, but they do not lead to direct increase in social welfare. On the other hand, if more GDP was concentrated towards the production of consumer goods, this satisfies the direct satisfaction of human wants, which leads to more of social welfare. And that is why when we talk about composition of GDP, So we say a greater proportion of the GDP should be concentrated more on consumer goods rather than defense goods or capital goods, which indirectly satisfy human wants. So the next limitation is non-monetary exchanges, which we are referring to as the barter system. And in the rural economies, barter system still prevails. Many activities in an economy, they are not evaluated in monetary terms. For example, the domestic services women perform at home are not paid for. The exchanges which take place in the informal sector without the help of money are called barter exchanges. But since money is not used here, these exchanges are not registered as a part of the economic activity, and they are generally not counted in the GDP of a country. Now, this is a case of underestimation of GDP. Hence, GDP calculated in the standard manner may not give us a clear indication of the productive activity and well-being of an country. Now, the last limitation is externalities. Now, what are externalities? Externalities refer to the good and bad impact. Mind you, the good and bad. And that is why we say the externalities can be good or bad. They refer to the good and bad impact of an economic activity without paying the price or penalty for that. As mentioned, they are both positive and negative externalities. Now I'll take up a positive externality first. Now, for example, Ram constructs a beautiful garden and therefore he's increasing his welfare and the welfare of his family. But his neighbor Shyam is not able to make a beautiful garden. So he too enjoys the welfare by utilizing the garden which has been beautifully constructed by Ram. So therefore, it adds to the welfare of Shyam, but he does not pay a price for it. So therefore, GDP in such cases will be underestimated. So what do we say? In case of positive externalities, GDP will be underestimated as the actual welfare of the economy. Now, talking about negative externalities. Now, this can be explained with the help of an example. Now, suppose there's an oil refinery which refines crude petroleum and sells it in the market. The value added of the refinery will be counted as a part of the GDP of the economy. But in carrying out the production, the refinery may be polluting the nearby river. This may cause harm to the people who use the water of the river. Hence, the well-being will fall. Pollution may also kill fish or other organisms of the river on which fish survive. As a result, the fishermen of the river may be losing their livelihood. Now, such harmful effects that the refinery is inflicting on others, for which it will not bear any cost. Mind you, this word is very important. This line is very important. For which it will not bear any cost are called externalities. As I had already mentioned in the definition, that externalities refer to the good and bad impact of an economic activity without paying the price or penalty for it. In this case means in case of negative externalities, the GDP is not taking into account such negative externalities. Therefore, GDP as a measure of welfare of the economy will be overestimating the actual welfare. So in case of positive externalities, GDP will underestimate the actual welfare, and in case of negative externalities, GDP will be overestimating the actual welfare. So now these are the 4 limitations as a result of which they reduce the significance of GDP as an index of welfare. Thank you. So with this we come to an end of the 3rd chapter of national income, which is national income and its related aggregates. and shortly we'll be starting with the fourth chapter, which deals with the measurement of national income.